And let's move forward now with what as I said, I think is going to be a great webinar today. So today's webinar, Breaking Down the Barriers, Empowering Developers with Service Management Insights, is sponsored and brought to us by IBM. And on our panel today, we actually have two distinguished IBM panel members. One is actually a distinguished engineer, now that I've used the word, and she's an old friend of DevOps.com. It's Dr. Rosalind Radcliffe, distinguished engineer and chief architect for CLM and DevOps at IBM. And Rosalind, welcome.
Thank you. Looking forward to it. Always enjoy our sessions.
Actually, Rosalind, I should mention you're an author too, right? Mobile to Mainframe, DevOps for Dummies?
That's correct, and hopefully we're working on version 2 soon here.
Cool. Great. We'll be sure to publicize that. And then joining Rosalind today is another IBMer, Dave Willoughby, who is STSM. And Dave, you're going to tell us what STSM stands for Cloud Emerging Technologies IBM.
Right, long acronym in IBM, Senior Technical Staff Member. Try to say that 3 times fast.
Yeah, I think I'll just stick with STSM. But Dave, I know you're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting today, and appreciate the effort and looking forward to it. So, sure. Guys, before we get started, though, I wanted to use another unique feature of the GoToWebinar system, and that is our polling questions. So this is a great way to get the audience involved and for us to understand a little bit about who's out here. So if you don't mind, let's quickly take a few quick polls. Our first one is up. Is your enterprise actively pursuing DevOps transformation across all environments, including a mainframe? And if you could select one of the following, and they're kind of easy ones, right? No plans. We do have plans. We are implementing, or we already have significant amounts of DevOps in place. And if you can give me your answer, we'll close questions off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, interesting. So, Dave, Rosalind, I don't know if this jives with what you were thinking, but fully 40%, almost half the audience, actually has plans to pursue DevOps, but they're maybe not implementing or significantly in place already, which is about another 40% or so, a little bit more than 40% perhaps. And then only 17% of the audience has no plans at this time, but they're listening in anyway, and we appreciate that. Let's go to our next question if we can, Jules. Great question here. Are IT monitoring tools used in the following environments? Prod is production, test, QA, or dev. You can only select one. I don't know what would happen if you had more than one.
Yeah, so realistically, let's say select the lowest level your monitoring tools are in. So if they're in prod and test and QA, select test and QA. If they're also in dev, select dev.
Okay.
Because hopefully everyone's got it in prod.
Okay. I probably would have done it the other way. If you got it at just dev, select dev. If you have it in dev, test QA. And then prod. But okay, let's see what we've got. Answer survey says 75% have it in prod, only 19 or about 20% in QA, and just 6% in dev. And I guess we'll talk about why we need more of that in dev going forward, huh, guys?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then I believe we have is that the only 2 polling questions, or we have more, don't we, Jules? Okay. Does your enterprise have progressive developers eager to try new forms of cooperation with the operations team? Well, that's a real DevOps question, huh? All right, let's get your questions in here. Or your answers, rather. And hopefully you're not thinking about it too much. And we'll close questioning off here just in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the survey says, wow. Well, the good news is only 12% said none. The bad news is about half of the audience said we have a few. And then near 40% of the audience, 39%, said we have many progressive developers who are eager to cooperate with the ops team. I wonder if we said how many are eager to cooperate with the security team, if the numbers would change drastically.
Well, I think the numbers would become none, but okay.
Okay. Our next question, and we hope, audience, that this is getting you involved in this and help us, get everyone's blood flowing here. Would your enterprise consider giving developers access to IT monitoring tools in production, or even just data streams from those tools? And select one of the following. And, I guess, do we trust our developers is the real question here.
Do we want to give them that level of information?
Mm-hmm. Or is it defocusing? But you know what? We'll just close it off here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And wow, 20, almost a quarter have them already in place. Almost a half say maybe. 12% pilot projects now and 15% never. Well, I wonder if those 15% never people will be moving to other employment. Okay. Here's another question for our audience. Would your enterprise consider creating automated developer data collection actions in production? And again, never maybe. We have pilot projects in place now, or we do have something currently in place. And I'm not going to wait too long because I do want to get moving along here. So if you could give us your answers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, maybe is a big answer here at 63%. Interestingly, Dave and Rosalind, is here we have 22% who have pilot projects in place, but only 6% have something currently in place.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we're doing this session, to talk about how easy it is to do this.
Yep, right, absolutely. And was that the 5th or the 6th question, guys? We might have one more.
One more.
Okay. Here we go. Would your enterprise consider allowing developers to build mashups of performance metrics using platforms like IBM Bluemix? And I think everyone kind of gets the idea of what a mashup of a performance metric looks like, kind of an on-the-fly dash. And let's see what our answers are. If you can, we'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the answers are, wow, here fully 2/3 say maybe, but only 7% have pilot projects now, and then another 7% have something in place. 20%, fully 20%, 1/5 said never. So
yeah, the nevers are a little worrying to me.
Well, but never is not forever, Rosalind. Anyway, I just want to quickly mention that the surveys and the answers to the surveys are being posted on Twitter under our @devops.com Twitter handle. So if in the audience you'd like to go, you pass by too quick, you want to see them, you could look them up on Twitter. However, with that being said, Dave, what do you say we show these people a little something?
Okay. Right. Yeah, I think those questions were leading questions for the various things we want to show today. Rosalind, I don't know if you want to add any comments, or I'll just kind of dive in. I'm a collaboration guy, and we'll talk a lot about collaboration and automation. Go ahead, Rosalind.
Yeah, so I think the key to get started here, and the reason we have the polling questions, is to really drive the concept of bringing operations and development together through sharing of data and through collaboration. by collecting data at the right time so developers can do their job and have the right feedback. And so we're going to be using a fictional use case, but it's a realistic use case. So let's dive in to this and see what we can do.
Sure, sounds good. So what was I once? Okay, so there's actually a slide we didn't bring today, but I talk about personas that collaborate. The personas being Maureen, the developer, and Michael, the IT admin, right? Those are the two teams we're thinking about collaborating. And we're going to think about automation of gathering data that Maureen can use, and maybe even giving Maureen access to tools that Michael normally uses in his IT job. So that's kind of a set of backgrounds. And let Maureen gain a lot of insights. And me, Dave Willoughby, I've had a very varied career, but in this last year in IBM, I did move to mainframes, and I've learned a lot. So it's been kind of I kind of feel like Maureen. Maybe she's new to the mainframe business. Maybe she's been given a set of applications to maintain that she doesn't understand. So not just staring at source code. Yep.
It's Alan. I apologize. I don't know if our slides are forwarding here.
Right. I'm still on the speaker's slide.
Okay. No problem.
Just trying to set a backdrop. Yep.
Sure. I apologize.
Yep. So yeah, I'm going to speak kind of in Maureen's voice and Michael's voice. So yeah, and myself, my personal journey has been learning an application I wasn't familiar with and a whole environment I wasn't familiar with, and how these tools kind of give greater developer insight. So in the last year or two, my team, my very small team at IBM, has developed a case study, as Alan said. Well, it's a fictitious grocery store company we call Breadbox Groceries, and just, you know, heritage. They started small a long time ago. Now they're very big. That's great. They've scaled their business, you know, geographically, etc. But they want to drive more sales, more engagement in individual stores, and they want to be more in touch with their clients. So you could think of any large retailer around the world. They're all doing this, right? So that's kind of the backdrop, you know, business context. And we talk about an engaging mobile app that actually my team and our sellers and IBM demonstrate to customers in our client centers at IBM how you could have a new engaging experience using maybe cloud assets, but connected to your on-premise legacy systems. And this app, one of the apps we show, is called Virtual Shopping List. Think of this as a customer breadbox. You walk into a store and you pop open this app on your phone, and the moment you launch this app, it contacts Breadbox Groceries backend mainframe, gathers your purchase history, you know, based on your loyalty program, right? Every time you go to the register, Breadbox knows what you've purchased, you know, visit after visit. It does some intelligence on that, and it makes suggestions for things to buy. You know, at certain intervals, you buy certain staples. The weather's changing. Maybe it's time to buy some more comfort foods or whatever for your family. A much more engaging experience, much greater customer satisfaction. So that's another aspect. And that's what Maureen and Michael have been given, is to manage this application. Moving ahead, what does the architecture look like? You know, typical hybrid cloud, the back end for Breadbox Grocery data centers on the bottom, you know, connecting to the mainframe, running KIX transactions that query DB2 to return a customer's purchase history up to, we're showing here, IBM Bluemix, IBM's platform as a service, where that information is processed to present to the user on a mobile phone. And since it's more agile, kind of out in the Bluemix PaaS space, like I said, marketing might change the recommendations based on the weather, the season, store traffic. They can mix up the algorithms for recommendations real easily and quickly. So each shopping experience is more engaging. So that should look familiar to a lot of us. And the questions we kind of asked kind of set the stage up front as far as automation, collaboration, sharing information, doing new and exciting things with data that maybe Maureen wasn't exposed to in the past. She's new, she's learning, she wants to understand how this application really works. So she works with Michael. Michael installs 2 recently developed files that create a JCL proc front end to IBM's Application Performance Analyzer, or APA, which is a performance sampling tool from IBM. And this is Maureen and Michael collaborating to monitor kicks specifically for that virtual shopping list application back in the customer database, data center. IBM has a product called IT Monitoring and the Tivoli Enterprise Portal. Maureen and Michael worked there together to set up limits on transaction response time. And then the action that's taken, and I'll show this in demo, let's collect some deep sampling data so that Maureen, can learn more about the app, maybe learn more about it in production. When an anomaly occurs, have the data, not needing to recreate. Maybe in this company, Maureen wants these exciting new situations and actions applied to the monitoring infrastructure, but Michael has to approve them. But the measurements are brief and low risk, so maybe when production isn't too heavy, they let these run and get confident they don't disturb production. But now, anytime, day or night, Maureen will have the data automatically collected for her, and Michael doesn't have to get involved either when a problem occurs. And they just sit back and watch. So that's one of the big synergies or collaborations that I want to demo today, that we were talking about today.
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the key, we're going to walk through and show, but I think this is the key background to say developer and operations can work together to set up this monitoring so that when that failure happens or that anomaly happens, it's not operations yelling at development to say something went wrong, but no, I can't tell you anything about it. I can just tell you it went wrong at this time. Instead, you can automatically collect all of that necessary debug information to say something went wrong and here's your data, so you can actually see how it was performing in the environment at the time. Because reproducing these situations in test environments or development environments is oftentimes impossible. And so this gives you this collaboration, but 2, it gives you this data that you need.
Right.
And in many organizations, I think one of the key points as you go through this is you have production monitoring tools today, and you have development tools that allow you to capture information. This is just setting up something that you can do today in your environment with your existing capability.
Right. I'm showing 2 example products that kind of go well together, and these are not new features or you need to have the latest versions of these products. And maybe you don't buy all these products from IBM, but some from IBM, some from other vendors, but still the spirit is here that you can automate and connect these products, make them work well together. So I think we're at a point where I launch off to demonstrate, see if I can do that. So the performance monitoring tool that we say that Maureen gets some access to and starts to nose around. Here's the Breadbox Groceries, the whole mainframe. Maureen starts to learn her way around. She knew MAS 52 was her KICS region. And this is the journey I went through as well when I started learning this application. I wanted to see my transactions. So I thought transaction analysis was a good place to start. But then I kind of stared at this a while and I'm like, these are not my transactions. And I came to find out, Maureen comes to find out that these are kind of at the instance, was your transaction running, when we took a snapshot. Well, so Maureen generates more traffic, trying to get them to show up here. But then she talks to Michael some more, and really what she's after is a workspace that does some accumulation, and she discovers service level analysis. She's like, shoo, this is exactly what I was looking for. Here's my class of transaction, B transactions, and in the last interval, 20 milliseconds was the average response time for 11 transactions per minute, 56 transactions in the last sampling period of 5 minutes. So already Maureen her eyes are starting to open. You know, she had no idea that the Kix transactions that she's maintaining in production, are they taking 2 milliseconds, 20 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds? You know, as this app scales, this is important information to know. And maybe it's a place you start making things more efficient, or you just know you have limited scaling by the latency of each request, perhaps. But Maureen learns her way around, that this tool is capable of drawing graphs, hopefully. Why is that not drawing? And putting more information on the screen. Maybe this conferencing software takes a lot of my power away to run this Java app. But for just this occasion, I have another mainframe as a backup. And here, we've drawn some history. We can see now in this mainframe where maybe this is your development mainframe and it's running a little slower. We're seeing between 38 and 43 milliseconds, but it's getting a bunch of traffic on the order of hundreds per sample interval. So this is, again, eyes wide open, even more wide open on just how this app is behaving. Without this, it'd be black box, right? She wrote the code, she managed the code. Let me go back to the first one. So now I'll go ahead and say, oh, this one's being finicky. I don't get it. I talked about situations and actions. So that's a right-click away on this this workspace that she's gotten really comfortable with now. So she and Michael work together, and I've penned up 2 situations that Maureen and Michael will support, perhaps in production, right? Letting eventually this automation run in production. So this first one was like a hello world that we set up just to kind of test the process. And you know, I could lower this amount and artificially get a trigger, right? We were seeing transactions running 43 milliseconds, so I can crank this down to 20, and we hopefully should get a trigger. And then the action that we're going to take is do a system rex call hello, and we're going to pass the average response time. And so that's kind of the hello world. The real exciting part is they've worked together, Maureen and Michael, on that deep sampling, performance sampling. And let's also make this, you know, a value that will trigger and apply that. And the action that we're going to take later in the presentation, I'll show this glue JCL and Rex that's used. So this start HLPD PRC2 is a JCL that's going to run the batch interface to application performance monitoring. And it's made simple enough that Maureen puts in a few parameters that she knows, that she's learned, and it kicks off that automation. Let's see. So I want to show, yeah, this is the mainframe I want. So in the system log, you can see the results. That's not what we want. So back here, I did this earlier in the day. Okay, so here's I hope my cursor comes through, but towards the bottom of the terminal screen, you can see Rex 08 hello 19. 19 was the number of milliseconds that got passed in from this performance monitoring tool into this little bit of Rex just to dump it into the system log. Some customers like to add information to their system logs, kind of tracing kinds of things. Others may have too much already, would rather not have this kind of information. But that was the first situation, just a simple hello, just to make sure all the plumbing is working. But if I scroll down a little bit further, here's that JCL proc running, HLPD PRC2, and it's doing this APA, DFW APA measurement. So that's a little thick. I know I'm down in the terminal. But yeah, it shows that it ran. Coming back up to more of a human view, here is an Explorer. Go ahead.
Yeah, and before you get off the human view, you can stay on the screen. I don't need you to go back. So that one of the things that's important about this is we're just hooking things together in a way that a system programmer or operations person would understand. And as was said, you can dump things in a system log or not, but you're seeing a combination of capabilities being used in this as ways of collaboration, of ways of sharing information and capturing the information when you need it. And in this example, we have Maureen being able to see the monitoring data, but even if you didn't want her looking at the text per se, you could still have that conversation and that discussion and then feed the information in this APA capture to the development team.
Right, yep. So, right, maybe, Maureen and Michael kind of looked over that performance tool we just showed, performance monitoring tool we just showed, Tivoli Enterprise Portal. But now I'm back. Maureen's kind of downloaded a whole bunch of APA reports. Oh, and here's one that ran today, October 24th. Either that was the one I just initiated or that was from a little earlier today. But let me go back to this report 220 that I've known so well. I'm confident the data inside. So here is a whole bunch of different reports coming from the Application Performance Analyzer tool. I like to start with this EO1 report, make sure in fact, if you see at the bottom, BBOI is Maureen's transaction, breadbox order inquiry, and it ran twice as we were sampling for a brief time. So that's good. We know we've got something to go dig into and do some isolation on. So I like this other CO9 view of performance, and here's percentage of CPU time in 2 of the breadbox modules, and it has this kind of click drill down capability. I'm noticing the leverage most of the CPU is spent in this first module, and I drill down, and Maureen loaded up her COBOL listing so she gets COBOL source statements and kind of confirms a hunch she had that most of the CPU is waiting on DB2 getting the data out of the database. So if she were to go look to economize or think about scaling this app, or if something went wrong, she'd have a view. Maybe this is the normal view, and another time when something's funny, maybe the CPU will be somewhere else. But this program, APA, guides her to really interesting information about her application down to a source code line isolation. So pretty amazing, right? We nosed around the performance monitoring tool. We kind of baseline performance and activity, set up some situations, calibrated to that baseline. And now, anytime in production, maybe we try this out first in development, we exceed some anomaly level, and we capture this excellent kind of data that I'm showing right now. So that's kind of the first part. That's the big demo. Alan or Rosalind, if you have any other comments or thoughts, tying that back to some of those opening questions. But that's a big part of what we wanted to show today.
Sure. So Rosalind, well, I'll let you, Rosalind, any comments, questions, thoughts on this?
Yeah, talking now on mute helps. And so one of the things that I think is important actually on the screen that you're showing is modern interface to access the system for the developer who's more comfortable working in this kind of space, in really showing the detailed kind of information you have available from the system that you can easily capture. And this can be captured in production. It can also be captured while you're doing development, the information. And the comments about comparing, so I've captured this data when things are working well as when I'm having a problem, so that I can easily do that comparison. I can easily understand how things are working. And so the prior green screen was maybe a little bit more intimidating, but looking at this screen here, it's a view. It's showing you what's going on. It gives you the information. So it's not, an unfamiliar way of working. And so you can work in tools that you're comfortable with, getting the information from the system at the right time. And you're getting this by the collaboration and by using the modern tools to do the capture, to have the information and display it.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just a kind of a coda to this conversation. Let's see if I can bring up the source code. That's having trouble too. But this Explorer, let's see, window, try this. Yeah, a very modern kind of Explorer. So I mentioned there's a little bit of glue code that I modified and developed for this, for these two programs to talk to each other. For the results of that action, that kind of command line you saw that Maureen and Michael entered on the GUI. Here's all those parameters coming in, getting them queued up to feed to the internal reader, all this mainframe stuff, to be able to do this batch APA measurement. So that's a little bit of code. So if customers out there who use these products today, with these two IBM products, and want this glue code, I'm happy to share it. This is the first hello world we did, just a little bit of Rex to put the current milliseconds latency into the system log. And there's this front-end JCL proc as well. So not much code, but here it is. And I'm happy to share it with folks that want to collaborate and kind of elaborate on this kind of approach.
Interesting. Good.
So I'll go back to slides.
And I think if we think about this in the overall DevOps discussion, and we think about the collaboration and trying to bring development and operations together, in many ways we have to we have to look at the environment to say we probably aren't getting rid of operations in any large-scale environment, because you need somebody to just keep the systems up and running. And some of the smaller companies have said, well, we don't have operations, we're just, the dev team does it all. Those companies are generally deploying to a cloud-based environment, and so, well, the cloud provider is providing at least a level of operations to keep the systems up. So there is some level of, I've got to keep the systems up, I've got to do some level of keeping everything running, and having the collaboration between the team that keeps everything running and the development team that may be, a pure, in a sense, a DevOps team. They may be doing all their development, all their own deployment, all their own, but they need this information to really understand how it's running and how it's processing, especially in a ZOS environment where it's a shared system and not, I'm deploying it to my own Docker container, I'm deploying it to my own system, and I don't have to worry about anybody else's processing on the machine. I need to make sure I'm doing the right thing because I'm on a shared system, and if I try and use too many resources, the system might tell me, nope, you're not allowed to do that.
Yep. Okay,
Right.
So back to the slides.
Right. So that was kind of the main segment. I have one more segment, and one of the polling questions was about, what if we let Maureen just kind of listen into the data, give her access to the REST API of this performance monitoring tool? Maybe she doesn't need to actually log in and do situations and actions all the time. Maybe she just wants to listen in. So that's what I'm showing on this slide, the on-premise infrastructure of a normal breadbox grocery environment. But the key metrics that Maureen really thinks is helpful to anyone monitoring her application, not the whole data center, where the ops guys, have to keep the whole environment going. She's a little parochial. She's only worried about virtual shopping lists. So she's copying a few metrics. In this case, I developed a demo where we're copying it to Bluemix, and I've got a mobile app, and I use Node-RED as a serverless event processing facility. So that's what I'll show a little of next. If I can find it in my many Chrome tabs. This one. So here's a view of Maureen, coding to the REST API. I'm not going to demo that too much further, but somewhere here I have the web app running. Maybe I lost it. Oh, that's right, they're over here. So, and I'll show a URL a little bit later that you could bring this up on your phone right now, anywhere in the world. But Maureen, morning, day, or night, she can pop open this little website. It's mobile optimized, and it's real time. She's copying out average response time for her transactions and the total transaction rate. And Maureen at one time was working on a funny situation where she was leaking memory, so she put in this little ability to trace the memory for her address space as well. So all she needed was, access to that REST interface I just showed. She's happy to do some, whatever mobile web framework she likes and match it up to her satisfaction. Going further, out in Bluemix, the platform as a service from IBM, there's Node-RED, which is kind of an IoT event processing platform. And it's this very simple set of widgets where, again, Maureen is gathering her little bits of data as a little HTML document. She runs it through a threshold comparator, a little bit of code she wrote, and she can drive tweets, SMS texts, and she's doing it all on her own out in the cloud. So that's kind of that last polling question was provoking in this area. So I ran this, I can test it, I can inject what would have been an interval to go fetch this little URL, compare, a little datagram, and then maybe tweet if it's over a threshold. I ran that a little earlier today. Here's my Twitter stream. I ran it twice, and you can see there's another way to get an alert on my phone just by pushing it out to Twitter. So if you look at my Twitter feed, you'll see this. So that's it. And to take it further, Maureen, or this is code I wrote a little Node.js code to put the same little metrics into a Google spreadsheet out in Google, Cloud documents. And here's her own view of the world again. She doesn't need to go to her office and log into this network monitoring portal that I showed earlier. She just opens her laptop anywhere in the world, opens this Google Doc, and here's a view of how her transaction's running. So these are the mashups I thought were kind of exciting. You just give a developer a little bit of, data, so to speak. That REST API I showed earlier, somewhere up here, this kind of stuff. And she does the rest. It figures out really what's meaningful to her, writes her own little control program, control panels or whatever, like I was showing. And it has the agility, accessibility, all kinds of cool stuff. So that's the other part of my story. Give developers freedom, maybe just listen on the interface, right? We're in an API world. Everyone's publishing APIs. If you publish the performance APIs to Maureen, she could do a lot of cool stuff with it. So that's, got to go back to slides. I think that's here. No?
So that's, I mean, if we're looking at these pictures and this simple interface that Maureen now has to see the data that she wants to see, she has this available in the way she wants to see it in the environment she's used to, and it's not going somewhere else. And I think this collaboration of sharing the information, and it's the real information, and reality is the monitoring tools, especially on ZOS, there's no reason, and I saw the responses, there's no reason that you can't run the same monitoring tools in dev, test, and production. And actually, most customers that I work with, they actually have the monitoring tools in all of the environments on ZOS because it's just easier to have them there in many cases because it's just part of the system image. It's making them running and they're configured so that they're not, you know, you don't want all the events and alerts triggered in the dev environment in the same way that you want production, but this gives you an ability to understand the metrics sooner in the development lifecycle so that I can get this feedback and I can understand what's going on and I can play with the metrics better so that I understand them more once it gets to production.
Got it.
Yep. So those are my slides. Those are my demos. I hope I didn't go too fast, but give you an appreciation, I think, of some really powerful things. Making two tools work together really well, or just one tool and some real freedom with the data can really give you a lot of insights and a lot of agility. So my last slide is a resources slide. So if you want to learn more about this, the first two elements, I did a blog earlier in the year that you can go read at that first link. There you can also get more of my contact information if you want to collaborate on this. My Twitter and other social media are all drdavew00. And a capsulation of most of what I showed, some of it's new today, is in a YouTube video as well that's shown in that second shortened URL. And lastly, that phone application where Maureen day and night looks at her phone to see how her apps, her transactions are running, that's also out on this third URL. So you could check that out anytime. You can see how my application and mainframe are running yourself anytime, day or night. Don't DDoS me though.
No,
we'll
not
take care
using
of that.
cameras. Excuse me. Not using cameras and other IoT devices either. But that being said, Dave, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
The presentation here. I hope it struck a chord with some of our audience, and we have a couple of questions here, but I encourage anyone who might have any other questions to join in. The first question, though, that I want to get to is from Paul Berryman in our audience. You know, he had early on put a question in or a comment that, you know, you wouldn't pay for IBM software for this. And quite frankly, I thought he was being sarcastic about the quality of IBM software, which wouldn't be. I was like, well, what are you doing on this webinar? But no, Paul wrote back and he actually makes a point that, you know, Dave or Rosalind, I don't know if either one of you, because you're not in sales, if you can address this. But to him, in his organization anyway, that management would never approve an incremental spend to move this into dev without a proven business case. The fact that it all it all does come down to money in the end, and is this spend actually truly saving more than the license cost? And that's an important question to him. So I'm wondering if Dave and Rosalind, have you guys done any kind of ROI on this kind of stuff where it is, you know, effective use of funds to do this rather than, you know, when you take in the cost of it and so forth?
So I think there are two halves to that. The first one is actually connecting your existing running, already paid for monitoring tools to data collection tools, which you already have, and having it triggered automatically is no additional cost. So there is no incremental, I got to go buy more. Most, if not all, Z customers already have some kind of monitoring tool, either ITM from IBM or something else that can trigger a situation. And most have technology, either APA from IBM or something else that allows them to capture the development information. And so in a sense, it's nothing new and no additional charge for that collection of data while I'm in production. And the interesting question about whether or not adding monitoring tools in dev or test costs extra, many customers that I visit already have the monitoring tools installed and running on those environments. They just aren't actually monitoring thresholds, etc., doing something with them. So they're already there, they're already paid for, and in some cases, you know, they're just sitting there, but they're not really being used. And so there's no added cost in those cases either. If you haven't paid for the monitoring tool to run in the dev environment, then you're probably right. I would look at what the costs would be to say if that would be justified. But if you're already paying for it, use it is sort of the point in that case.
Sure.
In the test environment, the later test phases, I'm willing to, well, I wish I could use a real customer example in the dollar value, but I can tell you for sure that if you find a performance problem in your test environment before you move to production, the cost to fix that is significantly cheaper. And if you do that very often, then you've covered the cost of monitoring tools if you don't already have them. Now, I really would be surprised that you don't already have them, but realistically, the ROI studies show very clearly that earlier you can find the problem, the cheaper it is to fix, and it's performance problems found late in the life cycle, i.e. after I go to production, can be serious problems within. So finding those earlier has significant dollar value.
Sure. Okay. The next question, I'm afraid, is no easier. It's another tough question. It's a tough audience. And Armando asked, how do we actually promote and encourage collaboration between developers and operations, right, in DevOps? He says it feels like, you know, what we showed in this webinar could easily be solved maybe by canned reports that operations can create for development to consume. What specific developer metrics and monitors would reflect DevOps? Dave, how about you?
Yeah, I think I talked about exploring and learning and baselining. I agree. You know, if you cooperate long enough, you'll probably get to some set reports, so to speak. But just the discovery and interaction is really the value I've been presenting today, I think. We just talked about shift left and finding things earlier, profiling your code earlier in the process. So yeah, those things make a lot of sense to me. But I agree, over a long period of time, you know, there's a certain set of operational kind of reports is good, but I think it feeds that knowledge base. Oh, I was going to say, Maureen has a change to make, either a bug fix or a change for scaling or something. Again, using the tools to characterize it and profile it. It's very interactive. A report can't do that. I agree, the break fix kind of reactive monitoring style, that's really not what I'm presenting a lot of today. I mean, the automation is great for when something does go west on you, but yeah, there's just so much more that we've been talking about today as well. That's more interactive, dynamic, not a simple report.
Yeah, but I think that the question comes down also to the fundamental, how do you break down that silo? How do you really get people to be willing and interested in talking across that brick wall that has grown up over the years? And it really takes a change in the organization to say that everyone is responsible for the delivery of business value, to have them change their focus from, you know, I'm just here to keep the system up and I'm just here to deliver code, to really having them have a reason to collaborate and see the value in the collaboration. And I think with organizations that have started to collaborate, the value seen within the organization helps spread the breaking down of the brick wall.
Got it. Got it. I think that might be all the questions we have from the audience, guys. We're just about out of time anyway. So first of all, let me thank, well, before that, yes, let me mention a couple of events and activities. IBM as well as DevOps.com will be at Gene Kim's DevOps Enterprise Summit election week, November, I guess that's 7th, 8th, and 9th in San Francisco. If you're attending, please be sure to see the IBM presentations, and I'll also be filming a bunch of videos there. And if you'd like to be interviewed by DevOps.com, please come find me and we'll sit down. Or even if you don't want to be interviewed and you just want to chat, feel free to. But you can see there are several DevOps panels and speakers, including Rosalind, who will be speaking at DevOps Enterprise Summit. So if you're there, please stop in and check it out. And then next, I wanted to mention, of course, the big IBM Interconnect event coming up in March in Las Vegas, and the call for speakers is open right now. It's open till November 11th. I spoke there last year. I've already submitted to speak there this year. Great event. There's about 20. I think they're planning on 24,000 people there this year, and there's over from what I've been told, there'll be over 300 DevOps tracks for sessions in this year's Interconnect. So be sure to check that out, and I think all of your, it's ibm.com/interconnect is the URL to go for that. And then do we have one more slide on our upcoming webinar?
In my deck, I don't have anything else.
Not a problem. Let me just mention it. We do have a webinar coming up on DevOps transformations, and it's with two people. Actually, I met at Interconnect last year. John Lafreniere, VP of IT at Hertz, who's undergoing a fantastic transformation via cloud and DevOps. And then Raganuth Ranan from Kaiser Permanente, who has done some amazing things using DevOps principles and DevOps methodology to really help this healthcare provider accelerate their business and scale. So I believe that one might be the 29th. You can find it on devops.com/events, and I welcome. And oh, by the way, that'll also, I believe we have Sanjeev Sharma of IBM also on that panel. So that's an all-star webinar that you don't want to miss. Anyway, if that's it, then let me say, Rosalind, thank you so much. I will see you in a week or two, I guess, at the DevOps Enterprise Summit.
Yep, see you in San Francisco.
Always a pleasure. Dave, I think you did a bang-up job there today. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks, Alan. Quite welcome.
Look forward to having you on soon.
Sounds good.
Okay, everyone. If that's it, then, thank you for joining us. Thanks to IBM for sponsoring. And this is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com, and we'll see you at another webinar soon. Have a great day, everyone.